Dr. Esper, thanks so much for being here.
Great to be here, Alex. Thank you.
I think it's safe to say that most of our audience is familiar with you as the former Secretary of Defense, but really excited to be chatting about how AI is affecting national security with you. So maybe to start out with, could you talk a little bit about, based on what you saw as Secretary of Defense and within the national security realm broadly, how new AI advancements could be deployed for mission critical applications and objectives?
Yeah, let me go back a little bit. Before I was Secretary of Defense, I was Secretary of the Army. And during that time in 2017, 2018, 2019, we really pushed forward to overhaul Army acquisition of cutting edge innovation. And we identified a number of priorities, one of which stood out for me was artificial intelligence. And I knew at the time that the more I learned about it, that it would change the character of warfare. And not just with regard to warfare itself, but also logistics and maintenance and all those other things. So when I became Secretary of Defense, we continued a list of a dozen priorities or so. And in my mind, AI was always at the top of that list, followed closely by robotics and a few other things. And so look, I still contend that it's a game changer on the battlefield. My belief was always that whoever optimized AI first would have a dominant advantage in the future. So I thought it very important that we race ahead of China, for example, and Russia too. And then, as you and I have talked and discussed things, the ability to produce information quickly, accurately, objectively to the military, to a staff, is really a big advancement. I think that can go a long way. But I could see applications in other areas as well, from the operational perspective of warfighting to logistics and to other warfighting functions as well. So a lot of potential here.
Yeah. I think the topic of sort of AI as a national security asset is really top of mind right now. There's an open letter published by Elon Musk and others about sort of how AI is an existential risk, and we need to sort of be very careful about how we progress it from here. What do you think that we need to be doing on AI as a nation to really safeguard national security and democracy broadly?
Well, clearly, AI is advancing. If anything, its use, its research and development is accelerating. I don't think there's any stopping it, nor should we want to. I think it can provide a lot of good to us, both from a national security perspective, from an economic prosperity perspective, from our way of life, right? How do we live better? And so I don't think we want to stop it. But on the other hand, look, there are legitimate concerns out there. So how do you put a universal set of norms and principles and ethics in terms of how it's researched and developed and applied that we could all live by? Now, again, it would need to be universal. In 2019 or 2020, DoD came out with its own guide, ethical principles for guiding AI that we would use at DoD, and I thought that was very important. I quickly signed it, and it has guided our work since. But I think something like that should be considered, and then how do you adopt it within the United States? But then it has to be applied universally. And there are other examples out there that we can look to kind of help guide us. But I think you got to balance the two.
Yeah. No, I think it's a fair point. I mean, the technology is very powerful, is moving quickly, and that's going to happen kind of no matter what. But what are the right ways to safeguard and really the right ways to ensure that there is no misuse of the technology?
Yeah, we have the same the same things apply. I believe in terms of medical research on humans, genetics, things like that. There are things you do and don't do. There are ways you test and do studies and you don't do. And there are generally accepted principles that govern medical science and whatnot. So I think it's something we should get on and begin doing. It would be good. It would be a good issue for the United States to lead on in some type of UN forum. And the sooner we get it, the better everybody will feel about where AI is taking us.
Yeah. I think given kind of what you mentioned around, I think as we both see the potential for AI to fundamentally change, how we operate as a military, what's the urgency that you sort of see in terms of really figuring out a lot of these principles? I mean, it was great that you led from the front back in 2019, 2020 with the DoD AI principles. Do you think that, what's the urgency that you see on the matter?
Well, when we talk about military conflict, and it's been true throughout history, there's always something called the fog of war, the fog of battle, which means that any commander on any side can't always see the entire picture. It is obscured, it is distorted, it is unknown in some cases. And then once you do have enough information to make a decision, is it sufficient amount, and is it accurate enough, precise enough to do so? So look, this is where I think AI, the ability to take in large amounts of data through sensors, through human reports, through any type of means in which you collect the information, but then to collect it, sort it, label it, and then present it in a way that you can sort your way through that fog of war and see decisions far more clearly, and therefore make better decisions that will allow you to accomplish your mission, save lives, reduce collateral damage. I think all those are good things. And then you could do it at a much quicker pace. So I think for all those reasons, that is a promise, one promise, if you will, of AI. And from what I've seen so far, it does seem that it could really help us make that type of progress that we need.
Yeah, totally.
So,
the Ukraine war, I think, has demonstrated how conflict has changed, and in particular, one of the big stories is how a lot of technology is really important in that conflict. What are your thoughts on our threats of our near peer competitors, China and Russia, and how technology plays into that?
Yeah, and I think the biggest advancement on the battlefield in Ukraine has been the use of drones, right, for either surveillance, targeting, or actual direct lethal attack. So, and the Ukrainians are making great use of this technology, modifying on the battlefield in terms of how they develop drones and employ them. So I think the same is going to be with regard to artificial intelligence. And look, our adversaries got great capabilities, not just the Russians and Chinese, certainly the Chinese though, great capability. And so it's going to be very important for us to run faster and to make sure we develop it. Doing so within a set of ethical guidelines, I think, as we discussed earlier. But we need more people thinking about how do we apply AI, how do we apply it to the national security space, because look, we can't afford to have the Chinese win the 21st century. We don't want to live in a system run by the Chinese Communist Party. We value our freedoms, our rights, our liberties, and what our great democracy gives us. So I think for all those reasons, it's important that we continue to invest in this space, we dominate, and that we share that with our fellow democracies as well.
Yeah. This is one of the things that I feel very strongly about. It's really been a shame that there haven't been more technology and AI companies that have been willing to really work very closely with the Department of Defense and work very closely with the United States government in actually enabling this technology. But kind of as you mentioned, it is really critical for the current era of near-peer competition.
Yeah, look, my first chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff was General Joseph Dunford, and I think he was the one that famously said, hey, we're the good guys, right? I mean, we don't do things perfect all the time. We make our share of mistakes. I think we're in it for the right reasons. We're trying to preserve those freedoms, those liberties, our way of life, and with all its flaws and everything else. So the more companies we have helping us with that, helping us shape that, is a good thing. And so I think what you're doing is just tremendous work, and we need more of it.
Yeah. One topic I'm curious to get your thoughts on is the sort of partnership, the public-private partnership, and dual-use technology in a lot of this. In AI, for example, a lot of the R&D effort has been done in the commercial sector. My view is we need to race really hard to bring all this commercial innovation into the government and into the DoD.
Right.
But this is obviously a topic that's often debated. What do you think are sort of the key things that are holding us back from that?
Yeah, look, it's a great point. I'm co-chairing this commission hosted by the Atlantic Council. We have a lot of gray beards from all sides of the aisle participating on it, and we'll have a report come out soon. But look, we don't have an innovation problem in this country. We are the most innovative country in the world, due largely to the creativity of our human capital, the private, the money that's out there, the private capital that is out there as well, that can really bring great ideas to bear and implement it quickly in the commercial sector. The challenge is you bump up against this big monstrosity called the Department of Defense, and things slow down quickly. And so the challenge with DoD is not innovation, but it's innovation adoption. And part of what I've long viewed and what we'll be recommending is how do you break down those barriers so that DoD can get access to this technology more quickly, be able to assess it far more rapidly, and then have the either regulatory, legal, or cultural, frankly, boundaries kind of smoothed over so that there can be quicker adoption. We should be able to adopt new technologies in a matter of months. Right now, it takes years in many cases. So if we can do that, that'll give us a distinct advantage going forward.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for your time, Dr. Esper. Thanks so much for sitting down with me.
No, thank you, Alex.
I'd like to end just by asking you one last question, which is, what are you personally most excited about in terms of the potential for artificial intelligence, even broadly, more broadly than just looking at the DoD, based on everything you've seen here at scale and all the conversations we've had?
There's what we know, and then there's what we don't know. And I think it's such a new field, and one that I'm still grappling to learn more about, that when I see its uses, its ability to enhance our way of life, to make life safer, more productive, more prosperous, it's exciting what's out there. And those are just the things we know. And it's an exciting space led by a lot of young entrepreneurs and creators and people like you and folks you employ here and in other companies in the United States. So it's just a limitless potential. And I think the more we can develop it, and again, do so within a set of accepted ethical guidelines, I think we're all the better for it.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks
Great.
again.
Thank you.
And really, it's always incredible to hear your thoughts on things.
Thank you, Alex.